Joe, if you don't mind confirming your info there in my screen in your lower left-hand corner, it says Joe Lewis, he, him, and then Joe Lewis for Twitch. The O in the Joe Lewis is a 0, right?
Yes.
All right. Perfect. All right. Well, buddy, thank you for joining the show. How you doing today? What's going on, bud?
Doing well.
Yeah.
It's been a little weird morning. I'm sure you know this too, because you work in production. Like, I try to keep things in a very much like walk in, sit down. And then I did the whole thing where it's like, well, what if I move one piece over here? And then I just moved everything. And then it's just like, there's this, what I call the garbage tenants, where there's basically like just things that are like in between the nooks and crannies of equipment. Yeah. So, and then it's like, oh, we're getting evicted. And it's like, yeah, I guess so. So I've just been cleaning and moving things around. And it was just one thing that I thought was super simple. So all I did was, usually I have a keyboard right here from when I teach. I just moved it up against the wall. Because there's been like a weird sound problem where this mic doesn't pick it up properly. So now what happens is I have it against the wall so I can get the reflection of the sound hitting the wall, so it catches the mic a little bit better. And that one problem solution just created a whole like it messed with what's the word? The feng shui? What's that word?
The feng shui. It's just everything cascades, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
So I've just been like, I don't know if you can see it. It's just it's a war zone back here. But yeah, it happens. But it's all good.
Cool. So, Joe, really excited to get to know you today. Of course, we've invited you here in the spirit of building leftist unity, strength, and power in that spirit. Thanks for being willing to join us and share your story. We're gonna ask you to sort of distill your life into some great life advice, and then of course we've got the leftist inquisition, the questionnaire. I want to let you know, please, pass or skip any question for any reason. I don't care. And let's just go for it right off the bat. We get to ask, where are they now? So, pretty much like, if you don't mind, introducing yourself, your name, please, your pronouns, and maybe where they can find you on the old interwebs. Go for it.
Yeah. So my name is Joe Lewis. It's my Twitter and Twitch are the same, which is Twitter Joe Lewis with an O being a 0. I guess in terms of what I do and all that, like the TLDR. Sure. I'm a Twitch OG. I started streaming back in 2010, intermittently. So I actually came from the fighting game community first. So basically what happened was the team that I was on was called Team Always Godlike, which was a partnered team from Team Mad Cats. And basically what the owners were looking for was like just getting into more content-driven creators and players in the space. And something that I was doing for the longest time before that was just contributing within this one community, in the Street Fighter 4 community, for this character called T-Hawk. And I was really big about like just sharing information about the character, sharing tech, sharing information. That was like in the really early days of Twitter, where it was just impossible to like, not really impossible to make videos, but sharing content back in 2010 was just a totally different animal. Like the integrations weren't really there yet, all that type of stuff. But Twitch was. So what the plan was for me to stream and do just what I would do on the forums, which was like create sort of like educational content about the character, ways to approach the character, stuff like that. And not only the character, but just like my mentality within fighting games as playing a grappler character. So like I would do the streams, they would chop up and do all the editing on the back end, and that was kind of the content stream. That disbanded, and not really disbanded, but it softly fizzled out around 2016, 2015, with the release of Street Fighter V. Mainly because everybody on the team was just, we're getting older, but just aspirations were different. The owner just had their second child, and they're good friends of mine. Annie and Kazi are great people. But yeah, they just had their second kid. The transition from fighting games was a little bit weird, mainly because it was a next gen console, and then when you have a release of a new game that's like in an esports cycle on a next gen console, it pretty much gatekeeps in terms of like doing that transition. So like if you don't have at this time a PlayStation 4, then you're kind of out of luck in terms of like just that whole ecosystem. I didn't have a PS4, so I was fucked. So from there, I basically just a lot of things just kind of collided into itself. What I mean by that is I got my first marching band teaching gig in 2015. And then at the same time, I sort of doubled down on DJing private events that same year. And I also just doubled down on just being within the private event industry in general. So those opportunities led to other opportunities. So I was just busy doing that stuff. And that was from 2015 till about, 2019, till about 2019. And then just life happened. I got evicted from my home. And I was still working, doing all that other stuff. But then like it created that second level of just like still hyper focusing. After about a couple months, just dealing with that, just being like essentially unsheltered, I ended up where I am now, which is the worst place to be right now, but it's good for what I need it to be right now. And then I slowly was like, okay, I felt not the perpetuation of capitalism, but basically just like constantly working and constantly just doing things for the sake of just like myself. And it's like, hang on, let me like try to have a hobby again. Where so then like I double checked online of like, hey, like where have all the streams that I was watching when I was playing really big up to? And then I reintroduced myself to A4 Andre's content. And Andre, for those who don't know, A4 Andre, he was mainly a fighting game player. And started out as that. And then obviously branched out to other things. I didn't know this walking back into the space. So he had this thing called A4 Auditorium. And it was just interesting. It was cool just to see people just talking about stuff, just talking, doing the thing. So I was just in there as a chatter for about a handful of months. And then this is also still at the same time during all this, I'm just dealing with a bunch of other stuff. And then like once I got settled in here, I started just going back into just like trying to just do stuff. So I would go on A4 Auditorium every chance I could and just like talk about things. And obviously that was in 2010. And that's when kind of things sort of hit ahead and a bunch of other like social and political issues kind of bore the forefront. And that was interesting enough for those who don't know the lore, like the very back end of what the A4 Auditorium was. But things splintered out. I started out doing my own thing, and I give Andre a lot of credit for that because he gave me it sounds so weird because on its face it doesn't sound that much of a big deal, but like he gave me the courage to like stream and like go into that route of content. Because right before I dealt with the eviction, I went into DOA 6 seriously. What I mean by seriously was that from and leading up from the release of DOA 6 to September of that same year, I streamed Dead or Alive 6 every day for 5 to however long. And It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I built like a little community from that game. And then I thought like, okay, like I'm back, like resettled. I can just like go back into that community again, which I tried, but then Andre basically kind of gave me the cold hard truth when it comes to fighting games is that the community is very fickle, where it's very hard to like people don't basically what I learned from that whole situation and just streaming fighting games is that people don't really watch streams for the content that's on it. They watch it for the person who's like behind the screen or behind the camera. So I just got inspired to just do me. It was janky. Like my first streams were for just chatting. I would use Grand Theft Auto 5. And I'd use the streaming feature on PlayStation 4, and I would just use that as the backdrop. So I'd find different spots in San Andreas or whatever it is in 5, and I'll just use that as the backdrop of the camera and the head. And I fooled a lot of people for a long time. But it worked out. But yeah, I guess it's the short but not too short TLDR.
All right. Wait, so what are you doing now? Are you still doing what's that game? The DOA?
Yeah. So I still play DOA 6. I still play Street Fighter 5.
All right.
It's a lot of fun, but it's turned into just like a side. Not really. It turned into the hobby that I wanted it to be, where I consider myself very proficient at the game. People like if I were to go to a tournament, I could probably do very well. But in terms of my dedication into it, I don't dedicate as much time or as energy into it. Not because of lack of interest, but just because of like, hey, like I'll play a couple, like maybe 30 minutes to an hour of this, and then once I'm done, I'm satisfied. I still contribute to the communities in those games. But it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy that. I'm still teaching and still doing the marching band and DJ stuff. Obviously, COVID is a problem, which is preventing those industries from, well, really, one's an institution, the other is an industry, of coming back into full swing. But it's been good.
Yeah. And you're on the YouTubes, and clarinetist, DJ, music educator. Look at you. All right.
And even that channel, funny thing enough, not to cut you off there, but that channel's in its third iteration.
Really? What do you mean by that? You do like different kinds of things?
So it first was a Yu-Gi-Oh channel.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I played Yu-Gi-Oh competitively for. I still dabble in it, so I haven't fully recovered from it. But I played that competitively ever since I was since the first starter set. Like the Blue Eyes and the Kaiba and Yugi starter deck, and I just did Yu-Gi-Oh content, and that was my initial in the content creation. Then Google changed the algorithm, and they also changed how comments work. So this was back around Google Plus. And I was a part, I guess, like what they would consider like a partner stream at the time. They were so bad at communication back then. But basically what happened was they changed how people would comment. So you had to attach like your Google Plus account. And I was just like, I'm good. So I just took a break from that. And then I just kind of let the channel just kind of die. At the time I left, I had I think 6,000 subs, 7,000. So it was pretty like a decent size, especially for Yu-Gi-Oh. And then it transitioned to doing fighting games, which then transitioned to just like fighting game content, whether it be Street Fighter and DOA 6. And now, since DOA 6 is essentially not dead, but they're not producing any more content for that game, now I was like, okay, well, I just do what I'm doing now. So it's in third iteration of the evolution of that, which is fun. It's nice just to have a place to put content that people can see in other places. So
I can relate. My YouTube is in its second iteration. Okay, so I think we're ready to move along to the next portion of the chat. Joe, this is really great. I'm enjoying this a lot. I really am. Now I get to talk about your leftward bound journey. Yeah. So I think you touched on maybe some things along the way that might thread into this discussion here. But yeah, this is a discussion about your pathway toward, leftism or towards left adjacentism. For instance, you don't have to define your ideology, Joe, if you don't want to. You're encouraged to, if you like to, and if you're comfortable doing so. Otherwise, yeah, how about we start to discuss your leftward bound journey?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey, I guess you would say, if to answer it literally. I was definitely a conservative for a vast majority of my life.
Wow. Chat's over. Thanks for the time. I really appreciate that. We'll let you go. Fucking with you. Yeah, we want to hear it. This is the good shit. Yeah.
Yeah. So
everyone's got a different path. I love it.
Please, So what I mean by that is I didn't really look into things in terms of political ideology, but in retrospect, I could look back and I was like, yeah, those were definitely conservative viewpoints. What that looked like was just because I lived in a very conservative household. If I had to describe my family, they were Reagan conservatives. Reagan conservatives. My mother firmly believes that Nixon was the best president ever. To close second being Ronald Reagan. Deep. Yeah, and what ended up happening was that like her approach to what the world is kind of like flowed into just like my thinking and navigation. One thing that I strongly recommend if you are an individual like that, respectfully, just yeet your Facebook, just yeet it. Like from like this the best decision I ever made was once I like around 22 or 23 I just switched. I was like, I'm gonna just delete this out of existence because what happens is you start seeing the time hops of the takes that you have and you're just like, this ain't it. And it wasn't even, and the thing was is that like people on the right especially or right adjacent, they talk about this idea of like, oh, they're just jokes. I totally thought they were just jokes too. They're not jokes, okay? Some of them are firm beliefs, trust me. And I guess the reason kind of how I got there was that, or got to more, I guess, like left-leaning type of thoughts and stuff, was just that there were just contradictions in my life that just didn't make sense. And even just individuals in my life that popped in at different points that brought up things that just didn't make sense. I don't know how the best I can describe it. I can give like a little bit of an example.
Please.
I guess this matters, I guess. I was adopted, and what my mom sort of instilled in me is this sort of like these colorblind frameworks of like, don't let people judge you by your skin color, but actually judge you by like the merit, like you're just the meritocracy bullshit. But then what happened was like I had an instance where I was pulled over for the exact same violation in 4 different townships, because where I live, there's just like a road that connects the township to township to township. And when I went to, like, when I came home, like finally, after all those infractions, mind I was just coming home from a job. I was just doing a DJ event. I was coming home from that, and they hit me for the same obstruction. And then like my mom was like, well, why didn't you take the obstruction out? And I was like, I did. I was like, why did they pull you over? And it's like, well, I don't know. Because again, at the time I was driving, I didn't mention it, but I was driving a Ford Mustang at the time. And something that people don't really understand about Mustangs is that you can have full visual on all sides, whether it be like the rear view, both sides. But if you're looking like straight on or at the side, it looks like there is an obstruction. Because the first officer hit me for my air freshener. I took that down. The second officer hit me for like, because my subs were in such a way where he's like, well, how can you see through the back? And like, I knew I could see through it clearly, like literally just like scoop from the back. So then I readjusted those. The third officer made me essentially reorganize my car in such a way that like it was acceptable for the obstruction, because you wanted to make sure I didn't get the violation again. And then the fourth guy just gave me the ticket, like, and didn't even like do it. Again, I wasn't doing anything, like I wasn't speeding. I didn't do anything that was like out of the ordinary. I was just getting hit for the same thing. And then like when I talked to my mom about it, she just kind of dismissed it as like a non-issue, where she was just like, you had to have been doing something. And it's like, I'm telling you I wasn't. Like, it's just like I was on the right side of the road in Jersey, you had to be on the right, left to pass, wasn't doing anything weird or out of the ordinary. And it frustrated me. And then even when I went to court, the judge dismissed it because the one case I had to see for it was the longest one out of all of them. And there were times that they were like essentially back to back from each other. Okay. So imagine it where like you had a court hearing at 8, then another one at 8:45, another one at 9, and that's including like going into. I'm sure you know this. Like when you go to court, it sucks. You got to wait in line, and then it's like, okay, even when you go into court, you still have to talk to the prosecutor, and then like all this other stuff. So it's not just like walk in the court, do the thing, and go off. But bless this judge's heart, she was able to drop all 4 charges because I told her, like, I just asked her, like, is there a way that I can expedite this process because I have another case in another township for the same violation? And then she was like, where else do you have to be? And I was like, I need to be here, here, and here. And then she was like, do you have the violation tickets? And I was like, here's my folder. So I gave her all that stuff. She adjourned for about what felt like an hour and then came back. Like, I didn't have to see the prosecutor. She was just like, I was able to get them all dismissed. I'm like, cool. Like, I still had to pay court fees, but like, I'd rather that than all the other bullshit. But that's what I mean, where it's like certain phenomena that was happening in my life just wasn't making sense with reality and how like you navigate around things. And that was what kind of slowly was pilling me on the on situations. And then just listening more. It sounds weird, like it sounds so cliche, but just waking up to the situations in society of just like, okay, none of this is normal. I've just been living in such a way where I've just accepted that this is normal. Whether that be just like, oh, you can like, if you just do what you're supposed to do while you're driving, an officer isn't going to bother you. Psych. If you work like hard enough in a business or an industry like that, there's only upward movement. Like in my job when I was working at I used to work at A&P, which is now like defunct, based union. I was making baller bank under that union contract, 1825 part-time. Come at me, bro. But at the same time, I had no upwards mobility. And like I watched everyone around me get promotions and stuff like that. And then I realized like, oh, like what exactly am I doing wrong that there's other people who are getting these like benefits of being like managers and all this other type of stuff. And even when I asked, I got you just got to work hard enough and then you're just gonna get there. And it's like, that's interesting. And then like, and people who I trained to like do things like work the register or work like automated teller machines, they were getting managerial positions before I was, with like a year in. I'm sitting there like I started working there when I was 15. I was 21 at that time. And it's like, wait, something is not correct. Like the 16-year-old kid who I trained to be a cashier is now a manager at 17. Yet like, what's going on here? And like, again, we're both part-time. We both work the same hours. Like we both work together. So something there's not quite working out there. I'm not saying it's like racial or anything like that, but it's just like weird. And then it just kind of hit a forefront. Maybe not a forefront, but I guess it just kind of evolved into what I think about now and how I navigate through life now. Which is fairly left. I am, I guess you would say, people would think I'm right on certain positions, but I think the only position that people can consider me right on is like guns. But okay. even then, it's like I would argue that most leftists should be pro-gun because guns are pog. But yeah, it's been a fun little ride. It's been interesting on Twitch where I've been working on taking what I do offline, which is try to have better conversations with people and bringing that online. It was something I wasn't really comfortable in doing when I first got into like this Twitch politics sphere. Like I always kind of felt that I needed to subdue what I would say to people, if that makes sense. And like not like show like my full personality on things. But now I'm just like, fuck it. Like my handle is my name, so I can't really hide behind a screen name or some type of like anime avatar in terms of like my ideas and my opinions. So like, has it yielded the best results? No, but has it been learning experiences along the way? Whether it be understanding Twitch politics or understanding how Twitter navigates, like yeah, it's been a learning experience nonetheless. But it's been a wild trip, that's for sure.
Wild. Yeah, Joe. You bring up a good point. I mean, I go by my name as well. It's you're the first person to actually bring up that point, and I appreciate that. Yeah. Well done, Joe. Can you help me here?
Yeah.
I need help connecting the dots, like the experiences that you pointed to of. You know, obviously, I thought you were being pulled over Because you're black. You're driving while black, right?
This is what I kind of chalked it up
Right.
as.
And I'm sorry.
Not to infer too deep, but
yeah, and also the lack of the upward mobility. You say that's not a racial thing, but connect the dots for us. Explain it to someone who's 5. Like, how does that pull you to the left? And yeah.
Well, yeah. So when I think of the idea of like merit and how, like, one of the big things that my mother would always tell me is that, like, just like work hard, do everything you have to do. If somebody tells you to do something, do it, and you'll get the rewards that come from that hard work and dedication. And while that may have been true when she was growing up, the game is totally different now. And if I understand now that race is not necessarily it's not a side dish. It's baked into the casserole. You're going to end up with dealing with individuals' internalized bias and prejudice no matter where you go. And it might not manifest in ways that like you understand at the time, but you're not like, this is something that righties get wrong, is that people on the left who talk about race and the consequences of race are not looking for racism everywhere, but it's just an understanding that certain things can lead to racialized outcomes. And then how do we prevent those racialized outcomes from happening? As an example, every manager that I worked with was white, despite the fact being very capable individuals of color, whether it be working underneath them. Some of them would be working in adjacent departments and they would put their time and their energy, but there would always be some type of hurdle. And the hurdle, they would justify the hurdle in different ways. Like, as an example, I worked in Whole Foods and we had a dishwasher who was amazing. He was there for about, like, since the store opened, and he was just like the dude in the dishwasher. Like, he'd just do the thing. He applied for team manager, or team leader, I should say, for prepared foods. And the reason why he did that was because also on his second job was he was a chef. He was a chef at a restaurant. And like, he's like, I have the experience. I know the back end. I know all this stuff. Like, sure, you want to argue that what you do is unique, but it's not. It's the same. Preparing food in a grocery store doesn't have much variance than preparing foods for a restaurant, especially in things in like back end and stuff like that. And that was one of his main arguments. And one of the reasons why they didn't give him the job was because he didn't have a car. And they were concerned about how, like, well, how are we supposed to rely on you to get to work if you don't have a car? And he's like, I've been working here and working 3 jobs and never called out the entire time I've been here. So the question of can I get to work is a non-starter. I can get to work. And you would hear, and what was funny was that it like, when I was seeing that, like, because I didn't really understand it at the time when I was working with him, but he was vehemently pissed because he's just like, I've been doing this the entire time, and now you want to say, and the reason why you're rejecting me is because I don't have a car? And it's like, come on, man, I live in an area that doesn't require me to have a car in the first place, and I still make it to work for you guys. And it's like little things like that where, and then what made matters worse, which really pissed him off, is that the person who they hired they ended up giving the team leader for didn't have a car. They biked to work every day. So, and he's just like, okay, what? And again, like, that's not necessarily on its face. You couldn't, maybe on its face, you might say, like, maybe there's like some other factors in there. And it's like, okay, sure. If there's other factors in there, why would they mention in the argument of why, like, we can't really have you for this position, that you can't, like, we can't rely on you to get to work because you don't have a vehicle, yet you hire somebody for that position who bikes to work every day. So like what's going on there? Is it because that he was a dishwasher there? Is it because like I'd rather, and this is the same argument that he has, and I agree with him on this, is that I would rather have someone not give me a position and say like, well, you've only been working in the dish room, so maybe like go for the argument for the positions that you're in, not necessarily for the outside factors that might not be in your control. Then like another thing in terms of like the police situation on my end, you want to believe that you're doing everything that's going to prevent you from not running into the situation. And even the officers that I was dealing with helped me to make sure like I didn't have to deal with the situation again, especially the third officer. Again, like he made me clear out my car so that he could not see the obstruction.
Right.
And then less than 10 minutes later, I get pulled over again. It's like, come on, man. And again, like if I understand that are people navigating in racist intentions? No, not all the time. What we see, however, is certain internalization of things that don't seem normal to our eyes that might create racialized outcomes. Like if I'm driving because again, like my car at the time was a green 2001 Mustang. And it was right before they changed the color tint of that model. So it was like that bright lime green. I'm driving in an area where Mustangs or even just cars like that of that color are not necessarily common. Mm-hmm. So on one hand, like if I'm an officer, if I'm giving as much charitability as possible, if I'm an officer, I see this color of a car, I see all this stuff in the car, maybe there's something else going on there that like this doesn't seem normal for them usually seeing in this community. So maybe I should just like see what's going on there. However, the question then comes like, is this individual breaking any laws that would justify me pulling them over? And then it's like, okay, if there's an obstruction, it looks like to be an obstruction, then maybe that's the reason. But then like when you, upon further investigation, you find out like, oh, there's nothing here. And then for the officer, the question is, what do you do at that point? Which I think I would argue that the officer should have just, I have bias here, but maybe just left me alone. But he opted to give me a ticket. And then go to the next officer, has the same choice. Third officer has the same choice. Fourth officer has the same choice. And now there's like an application of something that's leading to the same outcome. And that's where I just wasn't okay with it, where there's something. And even then, like the way that when I went to court and the judge looked at me and the way that she looked at the infractions, yeah. Like I could tell she's probably like, okay, there's something going on here that you don't hit somebody for an obstruction that many times in that short of a span. Like, because we're talking 4 tickets in the span of an hour, like on the same line of road. And the officer recognized that and was able to pull some strings. But not everybody's that lucky, right? Like some people, yeah. And I've seen it happen, especially in court, where they'll just get hit with something, they'll plead down to something that has nothing to do with the thing at all. And sometimes you'll hear the judge just play word jujitsu in terms of like what it is. And it's like, no, do you admit on this day that you were obstructing traffic by driving over the limit of 35 miles an hour? And it's like, yes. It's like, wait, what? And I've seen people do that in court where they just go, that's not what I was doing. And it's like, and the judge is like, no, stop talking. I'm saying, do you admit to obstructing traffic by going over the speed limit of 35 miles an hour? And it's like, yes. And it's like, wait, what? But that's what I'm talking about, where you'll see situations where people will have to plea out to certain things they never did in the first place, just because like an officer gave them a ticket that doesn't hold up. And the prosecutor knows that, but instead of dismissing it or saying like this is bullshit, it's like, okay, well, we still got to charge you for something, I guess. And again, that's not like that's not the best critique on the police system in lower courts, but it's something that a lot of people deal with, especially those who navigate deep in the in the justice system when it comes to traffic violations.
Okay. Let's go ahead and move on then, Joe. I'd love to keep digging in. This is great. Next up is what we call hashtag Be Best. So looking back on your life, we've talked a lot about what's happened, interesting journey, a couple different journeys we've depicted so far, your Twitch and online journey and your leftward bound journey as well. If you could distill your life, or your leftward bound journey into some, I don't know, life tips or leftism type tips. Imagine going back in time and talking to a younger version of yourself or something like that. Or that's not real. Time travel's not real. So maybe, more generically, you're trying to distill some tips for someone in chat or watching the replay. Yeah. What wisdom do we have to share today, Joe?
Yeah, I got actually two things that have been on my mind.
All right.
Yeah. These are, I guess you would say, prepared portions of my arguments. Thing number one, take notes. Your brain's not that good.
Oh my gosh.
I don't care what credentials you can. I don't care how many PhDs you have. I don't care how many books you've read about. I don't care how many times you've read the Communist Manifesto, not manifesto, manifesto. I don't care. You don't know it. And I think a way that you can help yourself, myself included, is take notes. And take notes in a way that you understand them. Something that I did when I was trying to understand more about race and social issues in the United States was that I read a lot of books. I have a reading list of the books that I've read. And then the problem was, in real time, I realized, as I got older, I don't remember anything I read. And I remember portions of it, right? I remember if you were to talk to me about Black Power by Kwame Ture and Charles Hamilton, I could give you a general gist of what the arguments are, but that general gist didn't come from reading the book. That general gist came from additional content of watching and consuming what they were actually saying about these things, not necessarily what they wrote. So something that I started doing, it's a very painstaking task, is going back to these texts and writing and just taking notes about them and writing things in a way that I understand it. I have I'm playing with them right now, but I have a bunch of just sticky notes. All I have are sticky notes everywhere of putting just spots in books that I think, oh, this is a really important page. Let me go to it. Because then what happens is when you're doing when we pick out a book from my frame meme, and then you're oh, this reminds me of this book, you can go grab it and then you can pull right to the page and be this is I'm glad we're talking about this because in this book, on this page, specific time, they're talking about exactly that. And the notes transcend beyond that, right? Something that I do a lot when I drive, not a lot, I do it all the time, where if somebody is talking to me about something and I get a phone call and it's hey, Joe, you got a meeting today. Even today, I don't have it because it's in my car. I went and got a Slurpee, but what I did was I literally wrote DanSimpson 2 p.m. you dumb fuck, and I put it on my wheel because what happened was it was 1:30 and I knew that I had a bunch of other things that I knew okay, if I want to go do this, I want to go do that, I want to go do that. And then lo and behold, I got into that work vortex of I got a Slurpee, I went to the bank and I was oh, let me get some eggs from the Asian store. And then I park, I see the sticky, I see the time, it's 1:50, and I was nope. It's we're going back. And that's important because if I understand that our brains are not the best thing in the world, then we got to do whatever tricks that we need to do to hack the system. And if you're looking to learn more about social issues in society or politics or whatever, just take notes of the things that you read. And don't be afraid. You spent money for the book, you might as well write in it and do what you want to make the book your own. Yeah. And then you'll find out things that you might have known. As an example, I talk about it all the time. I have this. I'm probably going to give it away at this point, but it's The Color of Law. This is the third copy of this book that I own. Why is it the third copy of this book that I own? Because the first book, I read it, lost it. The second book, I read it, took notes in it, lost that. And then I'm like, oh, let me just, I guess, like as I'm recollecting my library, I'll do it again. And then I found my old annotated book. And it's like, damn it. But that's the thing. Like, I also now, like, in my notes of the books that I've read, I have the location of where that book is. So I know in the situation when I'm going back to these pieces of text, like, do I have this book? Did I already pay for this thing? And again, like, it sounds like a thing that is, I would argue for most people, it's just pride. Of just like, I don't want to write the note down that says my brain is weak. Come on, how many Joe Biden jokes do you need to hear until you realize that our brains might not be the most fragile things? Let's just take notes, be like, do what you got to do. For like God's sakes, over here, I have a fanny pack. I wear a fanny pack every goddamn day. Why do I wear a fanny pack?
Yeah.
It's because I got tired of remembering where my keys, my wallet, and my phone were. So I was like, hey, why don't I have something that puts it all in one place? So when I take this and go somewhere, I know that everything there is together. And that was just brain hacks, but specifically note taking is an important thing that I think if you're going to get into politics and understanding social issues, like, you should do. Just take notes in the books that you read. And then the second thing, this is probably the bigger.
Hold on, before we go on to the second, do you have like little notebooks you take with you? I'm big on notebooks. I got big notebooks, medium notebooks, small notebooks. I got a little leather case for my notebooks. I'm a freak, dude.
So like, yeah, man, like I keep all in here. I keep goodies.
Yeah.
I keep markers, permanent markers. I keep fucking. It might not be in here now. Yeah or no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I keep like sticky notes.
So you're big on stickies, yeah. I see.
I'm a sticky fiend, man.
You like the super sticky Post-its? The rest are garbage, dude. I hate every other sticky.
I have it in here somewhere, unless I took it out. But I keep a notepad in here as well. I think it's out on my desk here somewhere. Right. I keep a notepad in there, like, and the same thing. Like, if somebody tells me something, I just write it down after. Like, because it's just important. And even like in terms of my phone, I keep my calendar on my phone, and I keep 2 copies of it. So like, I keep the virtual version, and I also just keep a handwritten version of it. Yeah, and I compare the two. Because again, like, I don't trust my brain on these things. So,
have you ever heard of something called bullet journaling?
Yeah.
Oh, I love bullet journaling. Yeah, that's me. Okay.
It's huge. Like, notes are huge. Don't, like, it's the big tip I can give to anybody. Don't trust your brain. Your brain is probably lying to you.
Don't trust your brain. Okay. Yeah. And then number 2. Yeah.
This is probably the more, I don't say it's controversial, but Twitter, and then by extension, Facebook. Facebook's a funny one. So let me go back to that. Twitter and by extension, Twitch is not reality. So the conversations that happen in both of those spaces are not reality. I can explain to you what I mean by that. So people, you'll run into all aspects of people online. Yeah. All aspects of people. You're going to run into black people. Spoiler. You're going to run into white people, Asian, trans men, trans women, black trans women, black trans men. You're going to run into all these amalgamations of people in this world. But you have to remember and keep an asterisk and fine print that the conversations that you have online may not be consistent with the conversations that you might have offline. So if, as an example, if my only exposure to conservatives, I'm going to name drop some people, I mean this in love, if my only exposure with right-wing and conservatism is with people like Redneck, Critically Thinking Veteran, Lecture Fan, and Rob Noor, I might not have a good perspective of what a conservative might look like within my local community. And the way that you talk to these individuals is going to be totally different, because you have to remember that people offline don't function with, I mean, listen, sock them Twitter. I love you, sock them Twitter, but not everybody in life is going to be walking around with a T-shirt with roses on it so that you know exactly who your comrades are in the real world. Because that's not how this shit works. It'd be great. It would save so much time if everybody walked around with like different, just like their Twitter bio on their chest. But one, not everybody has Twitter, and two, like, my point is that everybody is different, and everybody has different opinions and viewpoints about the world. So something that I started realizing is that because you're exposed to all these different types of people that you might normally not see as openly offline, the arguments are kind of different, and the consequences of these conversations are different. And something that I'm noticing is that when you have individuals who are offline and they start talking to individuals who are online, then the ideas might not be conveyed in such a way, and even the arguments as to why the ideas may not be conveyed in such a way just don't work out. Like the best example I can give is our everyone's favorite liberal of the Omni variety, when he had a conversation with Richard Wolff, where, like, when I was listening to that whole discussion, a part of me just was like, something's wrong here. And I couldn't really pin it. And one part of it, which I think is the core of my argument here, is that Richard Wolff and Destiny navigate in two totally different spaces. And what we saw in real time was the clashes of these two people who converse and interact in different spaces, just going back and forth at each other. And sometimes what you have to do is acknowledge that phenomena is happening and pull all the way up where, as an example, I've gotten into some very interesting Twitter beef with two communities of people. The first one is the Afghan community, excuse me, and then the liberal hawk community. I didn't realize that those two communities would come in solidarity at shitting on my Twitter. And I would get people in my ads. Basically, the TLDR is that I misspoke in an argument on a panel about my prescription in terms of the United States and pulling out of Afghanistan. And I said somewhere in there that the Kurds should help in the fight in Afghanistan. I may have said something along the lines of, as well, that the Kurds were in Afghanistan. Neither of those things are true. Especially the fact that the Kurdish are in Afghanistan. That's not true. And even the point in the discussion, I clarified what I meant from earlier, because things were getting lost in that conversation. Now, what happened was, due to clip chimping and liberal hawks not letting things go.
Wait, clip chimping.
Oh, it's when you take a nice quality piece of content out of context, and then you just put it online and go, well, look at this person who doesn't believe that, or thinks that this and that. Like, look how dumb they are. And it's like, hang on. Like, the context was, within the clip in question, was I had a back and forth with the individual who said within this argument that the Kurds were irrelevant. And my pop-off on him was the very fact that, no, Kurdish people are very relevant when we're talking about the conflicts in the Middle East, especially considering they kind of, helped us with that Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Whoa! Two groups we hate. And then somehow through TLDR, and then somehow through Donald Trump, we're just like, hey, fuck them. And it's like, hang on, like,
what the fuck, dude?
Yeah. And then, just the fact that I thought the idea that perpetuated that I thought the Kurdish were in Afghanistan just created a bunch of different arguments. And I had a conversation with this dude this morning, and he was like, well, you don't understand what it's like to be from Afghanistan or in these regions. And it's like, no, I don't. So tell me. And it just sort of threw him off, because he's like, what do you mean, tell me? How do you not know about the situation in Afghanistan? The same way people don't know about the Uyghur Muslims in China. So help me as an American understand your experience. And then we came out of that with a better, like, just a better, the conversation was better after, like, I acknowledged that, like, dude, like, yes, your feelings on this are valid. Your arguments on this, while we may not agree with them, like, they're valid because they're important to you. So let's figure out where our disagreements lie and have conversations about it. And then we came out of there with like an actual decent conversation. And something that happens a lot on Twitter and Twitch is that we forget that step of Twitter's not reality. So the people that you run into and potentially think are your enemy, they might not be your enemy at all, and there might be something in the communication pipeline that's just not connecting. And sometimes what I think people got to do is stop wrapping people within ideologies and just talk to them about the positions that you hold. Because even within that argument, the reason why I bring that up is because he kept saying, like, this is what you liberals always do. Like, you always say, like, these prescriptions are what's good for people around the world. It's just this neoliberalism. And I told him, like, my friend, in the nicest way possible, if you had to tell me or force me to give a definition of what liberalism, conservatism, Marxism-Leninism, I wouldn't be able to do that. I mean that unironically, because, like, we understand that these ideologies are not something that can be really fixed into a definition. You can, like, talk about the ideas and how, like, these ideas, like, branch out in a bunch of different ways, but being conservative and being liberal, while they can have, like, certain, like, traits and characteristics, like, to put that into, like, a nice cookie cutter sentence of what it is might diminish what it actually is and what it might be in the actual application. So, like, I don't want to have conversations about political ideology anymore. Like, I can say, like, you know, people who are right or right adjacent usually tend to come up with this type of argument. That's totally different than saying that, like, well, righties always think this. Like, hang on, like, you can say that an idea tends to come from a side of the aisle, but that doesn't mean that it's always from that side of the aisle. And I think sometimes when people want to make labels and do, like, a quick sort of, like, Twitter tweet to try to dunk on someone on their ideology, might be missing something. And I think something that I had to give, like, a tip to circle back is understand when you're on these spaces, these conversations are not going to go in the same way that they're going to be online or offline. So you just got to just keep that in the back of your head when you argue. Like, as an example, something that I avoid on Twitter and Twitch as much as possible is calling things white supremacy. I avoid it. Not because I don't think these phenomenons of white supremacy exist, but because I understand that there's certain words and certain phrases that you'll give to people that's just going to get them out of the room. And, like, I'm trying to keep these people in the room because I think they might support it if they just listen to the more prescriptive parts of the argument and those prescriptive parts of what should be done. So if I can keep somebody in the room a little bit longer by not saying white supremacy, and I can get them on board with that, then that's totally fine for me. Not a lot, like, and again, like, I know many people who do not have the type of patience as I do for that, and that's fine. Like, do your thing. It's just how I operate. And so, like, when I call things as they are, and when I use certain language for things, I just be careful with it. Because I understand that if I'm offline and I go to my council meeting, I say, this is just for the perpetuation of Western hegemony, and this bill that you're proposing is the inner fabric of white supremacy. It's like, no, you're losing everybody in that council meeting, and it's not your fault. But, like, the level that we have these conversations online might not be at the same level as people offline. Like, do we want to raise the consciousness? of people offline so that they can have like the heady things. And like, again, like I'm down with it, you know, like the stemless wine glasses, pinky up conversations of, yes, this is the perpetuation of Western hegemony, and all this chauvinism of ideals and practices is quite reductive, if I have to say. Oh, like I want to have those conversations, but we're just not there yet. So we got to figure out ways of like, okay, how do so something as simple as like, what's a good example? Like something as simple as Western hegemony, right? Like we can define it. Like we can define like the idea that Western civilization and Western culture is the norm in America. Like it's not a far-fetched statement. But then the question is like, if we talk about the spreading of Western hegemony, what does that actually look like without using ideological jargon? Like, and then being able to talk about it like that, because then you can hit people. It's like, don't you think that people should be able to like determine their own destiny? Yeah, I think so. Okay, good. So do you think that America has any business telling other countries what they should be doing as people? Well, it depends. Well, depends on what? So, and like, because then then you get into the nitty gritty. Because then somebody says, "Well, I don't think it's okay for them to just nuke their own people." Great, I agree. So there's like exceptions to where like these limits lie, and that's a better conversation. And then instead of people just defend it or dying on certain hills of like, well, America, we gotta help these people. Like, we gotta help these people, and especially if they're hurting their people. And it's like, hang on, like you just said that you think people should determine who they should be, where they live. So there's something else here. And unfortunately, what happens is, and this is where I respect my right wing brothers and sisters on the other side of the fence. But sometimes what happens is when you talk to individuals online, and especially on Twitter and Twitch, they start falling into these traps of like, oh, this is just the left always does this. They just want to dunk on me rhetorically and stuff. It's like, hold on, like I'm not gonna rhetoric Randy you all the way to try to like be like, haha, I caught you, you're racist. Like, no, you have an opinion about this. Maybe if we walk through this, you just walk through your idea, or walk through what you want to say, then maybe we can come out of there with a better thing to talk about. Because I would argue the other thing, it's the final thing, like the tie into like the third thing that I didn't really say of the two problems. The third is kind of within the second problem. It was is that we are really bad at our own arguments. Really bad. So something that I try to do now is, how do I say what I want to say in its simplest possible terms? So if I'm trying to get somebody on board with understanding white privilege, I might say something along the lines of like, hey, the like white privilege is the prioritization of the expectations, needs, and desires of white people. Well, that's not true. Everybody has expectation, needs, and desires. Cool, I agree. So maybe certain prioritization of these things might, even though we all might share this desire, maybe a group of people are being prioritized. And they might not, and maybe that prioritization has nothing to do with skin tone, but again, it's not racist, but it's creating this racialized outcome. So as an example, if Shelby v. Holder is preventing predominantly Black Americans to have their ability to vote, and I would say a desire is, on the day of elections, I want to vote for my candidate. And I want to go to the polling booth and just go vote and get the fuck out of there. But if I'm met with this long line to the polling booth, and then maybe if I'm hungry, people can't really feed me, like maybe that's leading to an outcome that I wasn't seeing. That outcome can be racialized. So maybe white privilege is manifesting in this way. Again, this prioritization of the expectations, wants, needs, and desires because of this law, because of other things. And then like the counter argument from there is like, well, there's poor whites too. Yeah, that's why I said prioritization. Just because you're number one in the queue doesn't mean, like, we've all been there. Everybody's at the same line. There's one cashier, and like I'm next in line, and then maybe another kiosk opens, and they take this person behind you, and you go, wait, but I was next. And it's like, yeah, well, maybe you were next in this line, and because this new area opened up, the person behind you is prioritized instead of you. Prioritization doesn't mean that you're prioritization does not guarantees. So you're going to have white Americans in the United States who don't have their wants, needs, and desires prioritized. But that doesn't mean your lack of prioritization, it doesn't lead, like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's, but again, like, put it. Yeah, like, so when you're
sort of a different angle there coming at it instead of just boldly saying white supremacy. Systemic racism.
And again, like, there's nothing wrong with people who do that. Like, I'm not trying to to bring people down on the way that they talk, but something that I try to do now because I'm trying to run for office. Well, the paperwork's done and in.
Hey.
Like, I'm gonna have to word my things differently.
Did you say you're running for office, Joe?
Yeah, right now it's Township Council and Board of Education. It's probably going to be Board of Education by the end of it. It seems to be that like my general interests and desires to help people align there a little bit better. Also, my township is wild, so so like, because the long term goal for me, right, is to run for state legislature. Like, I'd really want to like end up within like New Jersey, not Congress, but New Jersey Assembly. Love to be a representative in the House of Reps. If Marjorie Taylor Greene taught us anything, it's possible, baby. It's totally possible.
She's a hero. That's one way to put it.
Listen. I look at her and I go, if she can do it, I can do it. All right. I was gonna find myself a place in red country that doesn't have a lot of representatives. Pro-gun the shit out of it, and I'll make it in there.
Oh gosh.
That's what I meme about this a little bit in my community, where there is a level of like gamification you can do with the system. But I tell my community unironically that if you see me on Fox News with a district, like Representative X district with an R, you can know that the grift is real. Like the right-wing grift is real. If I can make it into the House of Representatives as a Republican, everything you ever thought about the right-wing grifting, about the left ending up on the right because of money, it's all true. It's all true. Because every once in a while, I look at Candace Owens and I'm like, man, I can make a better argument. Where's my cushy desk job own deal? Like,
all right, Joe, I'm going to insist we move along here.
Yeah.
This is just an aside. This is just going a little longer than most interviews, but I'm fine with it. I'm really enjoying it. Just want to make sure you're doing okay on time.
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Okay. The next part of the interview is called the Leftist Inquisition. It's the questionnaire. Everyone loves it. No one hates it. And Joe, for any reason, you're encouraged to pass or skip any question for any reason. I won't take it personally. These are just sort of like almost like icebreaker questions, just for us to get to know you a little bit better, and the chat on a light note here. So, Joe, do you have a favorite word?
I do. Yeah. A word that I hold dear is acknowledgement. And it's for the stupidest fucking reason. I tried to do a spelling bee in third grade, and acknowledgement was the only word I could spell. So, and it just stuck to me. Like, it just stuck to me as a word that I could spell, and I just knew, and I use it a lot now. So,
Joe, do you have a least favorite word?
Gumbo.
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 You don't like gumbo? Wait, the word gumbo?
Listen, okay, I understand those Southerners and their foods, but I look at Georgia and I'm like, do you really like grits? And I look over to Louisiana and it's like, do you really like gumbo? Like, are you sure about that? And it's, look, all right, I'm not trying to say New Jersey is the bastion of food. Okay, we don't even put our, like, when you get a bagel from Jersey, we don't even put the topping on both sides of the bagel. That's the praxis. If you get an everything bagel and it's just on one side, I just throw the bottom out. I don't waste my time with that. Like, I gotta get the everything on the top and the bottom.
All right, Joe Lewis, do you have a favorite drug, vice, or guilty pleasure? Or Joe, you can name one of each if you like. It's all good.
Yeah, so I gotta do. I really enjoy propaganda.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
as the best propaganda that I enjoy personally is Law and Order SVU. I just like the show. I don't know why. And then even with the spinoff that they did when they brought back Detective Stabler, it's called Law and Order Organized Crime. I strongly recommend every left-leaning individual to watch that show, and it's a fun game. The game is, can you guess the scene before the scene happens? Because it's so procedural and so pro cop and pro, like, three-letter agency, it hurts. and
Yeah.
And the thing is that it's not even subtle. Like, Law and Order, especially SVU, it is not subtle in trying to make it seem like these systems that we have in society work the way that they do. Like, and then every once in a while they get the sad case of, like, this is what reality is. Oh, the sad strings. Like we just got that dude for life in prison. He's gonna get it for 50 years. And then it's like, why is he making it out after 5? He was good in prison. And it's like, but he raped me. And it's like, there's nothing. It's just the no. And then it just cycles back to the final scene of them just doing the same crime, and then they're all just looking at each other like, I can't believe it. It's like, stop it. You know it's and then I guess, like, when it comes to vices, like other, like, sort of like vices and guilty pleasures. Listen, I like hot tub streams are kind of based. It's fun. Yeah. Like, unironically, when it comes to, like, it's a funny thing of when you look at Twitch in a vacuum.
Yeah. Where
you see, like, the side of Twitch politics and the panel sphere of people arguing with each other all the time. Right. Then you have, like, the space that you and I operate in, where we're reacting in content in a different way, of just like, hey, we're going to look at some things, we're going to learn a little bit, we're going to educate our communities a bit, we're going to come out with a little bit more wrinkly brains. Then you just have the gaming community, that they're just playing their games over lo-fi hip-hop and just doing the thing. Actually, how dare I would say that Twitch politics, they have the lo-fi hip-hop game on lockdown. You can't find a leftist account without, like, a little bit of Jay Dilla backbeat and some like chords underneath a bunch of filters. That's just, we have that space on lockdown. And then when you pull even farther back, you see a sector of content creators that are just in kiddie pools talking to their audience.
It's amazing.
and a part of it is, it's weird, but a part of it, to me, intrigues me in a weird, like, meta aspect, in that there's all this other stuff that's happening on Twitch that seems like logical progressions. And then there's just this one side that is growing in a way that I would argue they're going to have to Twitch has to figure something out in terms of, like, what the site needs to be. But it's just existing. They're just existing, not giving a fuck. A part of me is just like, bro, respect. Much respect. I'm just like, I'd love to just soak in a kiddie pool in my kitchen on a banana. Hey. I can't do that. But and then like, oh my God, thanks for the sub. And they just take a Sharpie, write the name on there, and it's like, damn. That is some fucking free market capitalism in play.
Brilliant.
And then you see, like, the Asmagod. What's that dude's name? I don't know. He looks like he should be an extra in a Thor movie. And then XQC. It's like, I can't believe it. And it's like, shut up. Yes, you can. Like, if there's a whole, if America taught us anything, if there is just enough exception in a rule, people are going to find a way to break it. And when not necessarily break it, but just exploit it and double the fuck down. And now we're just seeing content creators doubling the fuck down. And I respect it. I much respect it. And what's funny is that you're seeing that there's also a normalization of the content. Mm-hmm. Where it's like and then it gets a little like not uncanny valley. That's not the best word, but it's interesting to me how you can go down the line and there's just like there's a clear meta of how this game is played, and those who play the meta, they're fine. They're living their best life. I'm just saying that like, hey, like, just call it like it's not a hot tub, it's a kiddie pool indoor. And nobody's talking about that. It's like they say, like, hot tub streams have to be stopped. Bro, that is a kiddie pool. You could probably find that on toysrus.com right now. And on top of that, they're indoors. Like, not all of them, okay? As a firm, as a PhD candidate in studying hot tub streamers, I understand that not all of them are indoors, but the vast majority of the kiddie pools are inside.
Yeah.
Again,
they must be getting all types of floor damage. I always wonder about
that. I'm made of questions. Like, okay, what do you do? What do you do with the water after you're done streaming? Do you just keep it in there? Like, how do you deal with the moisturizing situation? Like, because a lot of them, they're like torso up when they're not in the water. So their feet must be like the softest things in the world. But at the same time, like, how do you deal with the moisturizer? Because if you're in a pool for too long, like you're gonna get them crinkly feet. So, what type of lotion are you like? There's so many other avenues of branding, and all. It's like, why is there? Unironically, why aren't there lotion sponsors? Why aren't there moisturizer sponsors? Like those are easy avenues. Like, come on, hot tub streamers.
All right, Joe. I'm going to insist we move forward here. Yeah. The next, I'm skipping questions, dude. I'm skipping. All right. The next question is, what's your favorite cheese? You get one answer unless you break the rules, and I can't stop you.
Munster. Free.
Ooh, Munster.
Free. It's the only thing that's difficult about it. Getting, again, with tons of retail experience, is that the brand matters for Munster. I think more so than most like generic deli cheeses, because sometimes you'll get the situation like it melts great, but it also depends on what type of like what you're using it for, right? Like Kraft Munster, but Applegate Farms Munster, what? Like. And then on top of that, you have like the local brand. Like again, like nothing for me beats local cheeses. Like if you have somebody who makes like a local Munster, they're probably doing some witchcraft in there, put a little dusting a little cocaine in there. Like they're doing something in there that just makes that hit different. But yeah, I would say Munster, without
doubt. Joe, if you were reincarnated and you came back as a plant or a non-human animal, and somehow you got to choose, what would it be?
Cats. A cat.
Yeah.
Probably a cat. They live a good life. Living a good life. Now, close second, probably I would say a bird, just to experience that. But then the question is, to get not too deep in the hypothetical, is like, do I keep my same level of consciousness and observable awareness? Like, do I keep all of my previous knowledge from the reincarnation?
I don't know how it works, to be honest.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Because if it's all my previous knowledge, I'd be a rat in New York. Because them rats, they'd be eaten. Like that's the like. Listen, when it comes to the unsung situations in the pandemic, when it comes to stock value of creatures, rats up, cats up, dogs up. They're like, bro, COVID? What's COVID? Like, we'll let this go on forever. Our owners are home all the time. Food, endless supply.
You're going to be New York's Remy the Rat.
All right. The rats are eating, man.
They're eating. They're eating what? What would God say if you got to the the pearly gates at the end of your life, and then, there's God, and God says some stuff. What would you like to hear God say?
He'd probably say, why would you even think about coming up here first? I unironically meme about it, but if I'm in line up to heaven and everybody's just going up there, God would come out from his office and be like, why are you even in this line? Like, you know where you're going. Like, why are you prolonging this? I'd be like, you know what? You're right. And we'll just quietly march downstairs. I'm convinced, like, if I die, I'm definitely burning for eternity. So, hey, I could be wrong. But I personally argue that I'm probably burning for eternity. If I'm not, I'm probably going to end up being like a tree or something. And I'll probably be next to, like, I don't know, Matt Gates' house. I don't know where I end up. But because that's the thing, right? For me, like, if and when I die, not even a matter of if, when I die, somebody is going to be correct. And even if I could talk to the person to show them that everything is correct, society already deems them as crazy anyway. So there's like nothing I can really do. So I've just kind of accepted that. Like, someone's going to be correct. Hopefully it's the side that I want. If not, I can't act like I wasn't warned. But yeah, I'd say that if God saw me, he'd be like, why are you even in this line? Come on now. Like, who are we kidding?
Hilarious. Joe, all right, name an influential leftist, be them dead or alive, that you'd like to maybe have a hypothetical conversation with, and you could define leftist any way you like.
Oh, yeah, I'd say Charles Hamilton.
Hey.
Charles Hamilton wrote a bunch of books, one of which being Black Power with Kwame Ture. He is a civil rights, or rather, he's a professor, a scholar, but he is coined or known for talking about the law and how race is embedded within the law and the racial outcomes that with law and legislation. And he's a very important individual. He's also smart as shit. So I'd love one day, while he's still here, to have a conversation with him. That'd be a really cool thing. He's a dope individual. And he's also one of those intellectuals that's very few conversations online. He has a couple of interviews, and he lived a long, complicated life. He was one of the many black professors that got canceled, like literally canceled, in terms of like their ideas of being too radical.
Cancel culture.
He also was investigated by the CIA and FBI through a interesting plan that they did of trying to find communists in America.
Oh, I never heard of that.
Yeah, no, something about coins and counterintelligence. I don't know.
It's coins. Yeah.
But yeah, he was like alongside King and many others. He was investigated by the FBI, and did they find the communists? No.
Jeez, dude.
But yeah, he's an interesting individual, and I think like when it comes to people with interesting insight, like he's one of those people. And it's unfortunate because I think for a lot of black leftists around that era, whether it be the 1960s and 70s, they get cast in this really weird light of being too radical or too communist or too pro-China, too pro-Cuba. And like, if we remember that the end game for a lot of them is being anti-poverty and anti-capitalism, then for a lot of people on the left, they probably would be down with a lot what they have to say. Some you have to like, get through a lot of things, like Eldridge Cleaver. There's just a little bit of like yikes that you gotta have kind of like plow yourself through. But for someone like Charles Hamilton, it's gonna be no different. Like, does he have like really good perspectives about the law and how it relates? Absolutely. If I talk to him long enough, am I going to find something that him and I disagree with? I'm sure that's natural, but still have a conversation with him. Cool.
What do you think you might ask? How do you think it might go? Conversation.
I'd first talk to him about like, listen, how did they investigate you? And how did you find out? I'm really curious about those who were targeted by the, and unironically targeted by the FBI, knew they were targeted by the FBI, and how they navigated around that. Because like, there's no, as an example, right? Like, there's no denying that the Black Panther Party was infiltrated by the FBI, but when you listen to members who are still alive, like Elaine Brown, she argues that the infiltration wasn't as extensive as people think it is or was. And it's like, in a way, that makes sense. Like, you don't need a bunch of informants in an organization. You really just need one or two. And then once you find out the one or two, that can create... Oh, God, they're probably watching like, yeah, keep talking. How should we do our jobs?
Yeah.
But
he said, take notes.
Yeah. But for him, it's that he's someone who knew that he was being investigated upon. He didn't let that like influence his politic too much and influence how he navigated. He is one of the individuals, I would argue, coined the idea of professors being on the left, and the idea that like these leftist professors, and again, like, there's no basis to that, but there is something to say as professors or individuals who are trying to understand more about the world, and then they go like, wait a minute, like, how deep is race involved in our politic? Like, how deep is race involved in our law? And is that really a leftist ideology, or is it just what reality is? And then if we acknowledge that, like, hey, these laws lead to racialized outcomes, these practices can lead to racialized outcomes, how can we prevent these racialized outcomes from happening? So that we can just live in a society, as he argues from time to time, like, we understand the consequences of race, we understand the racialized outcomes, but how do we go about that? I'd love to hear his perspective on that, especially considering how wild of a journey he lived under. This individual born in 1929, and he's still kicking. So he's like, what, like 91, 92 at this point? And like, when you see him like and talk and navigate, it's like, man, brains are just built different and bodies are just built different. Because I hope to look and sound as good as he does at 90. It's not looking good for our boy, but I'm hoping I got like 60 more years to right the ship. All
right. Moving right along. The next question is, I don't know, maybe you just named it. And maybe we were just looking at it. We were just talking about Black Power, Politics of Liberation by Kwame Ture, Charles V. Hamilton. Otherwise, do you have a favorite leftist book or author if it's not that one?
Yeah, if it's not that, I don't necessarily call it leftist per se.
All right.
I just forgot the name of it. Oh my goodness!
It's gonna come. I'll edit this out, and I'll make it seem like you never forget.
Yeah.
I'm gonna forget to edit.
Give me one sec. Kindred.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm so sorry. What was that?
Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. It's not really a leftist book per se.
Okay. But
it's definitely a book that deeply. I don't know. I have an elementary education sometimes. It was one of the books that got me hooked into understanding more about race, Black issue, not really necessarily Black issues, but Black history very generally and broadly. The TLDR, not to spoil it too much, is that you have a main character who essentially time skips through her own lineage. And by time skips, like literally time skips back to how you would say, like, I guess you would say it's like slave era, so to speak, not even so to speak, quite literally. And then the consequences of that. So she has this knowledge going back in there, and then like she starts running through these different sort of scenarios. It's a book that's used a lot in like college level academia, I found out later. But it's a good book. It's also a really easy read in terms of like how like the characters navigate, how like the intentions of the character. And then what's also interesting is that not to spoil it too much, is that the character also doesn't time skip at the same point every single time. So like she'll time skip with this one character when he's a child, then when she skips and comes back, he's now a teenager, skips to come back, middle adult, skips to come back, like older gentleman, and like the evolution of that, of not only her as a character where the time removed isn't that far, but for these individuals it's an incredibly like long span of time between their interactions with each other. So it's a really interesting book. A little bit of Afrofuturism too, like a little sci-fi, sci-fi in your history.
Yeah, I like him. I like him mix it up. I like to taste the rainbow.
Yeah.
All right, so Joe, I think that brings us to the last question of my Inquisition, which is streamer tips and tricks here. You're a streamer. You probably watch some streams. What do you think is important for streamers to know, be them a beginner or a veteran alike, or one of the, just something that's specific for them? I don't know what I'm trying to say. Whatever you think.
I would say, don't use here we go, bootstraps. Don't use technology as an excuse as to why you shouldn't produce content.
Okay.
So what that looks like is in the A4 Andre days, it's over here actually, underneath this barrel of face masks and pay stubs. I streamed my content on the A4 Auditorium on this. This is a ZTE Axon M, which battery is dead right now, but it's one of the first dual screen phones. So what I did was on one side I had Whereby, and the other side I had Discord. So what I did was I plugged in an audio interface that I had just lying around that was able to accept USB-C, and I would just have that up while I was just in the call having these conversations. Was it the most cursed audio ever and the cursed experience in terms of technical issues? Absolutely, without a doubt. But and then also too, like, so I would have that up, and then I would have like the stream chat on my phone. And I would just sit there and like interact with the two. And I did that for months. And something that I learned through that is there's a way to do what you want with what you have, and asking questions and trying to innovate with what you have makes you way smarter when you actually have more stuff, because you can understand of like, as an example, even with like before I ended up with like all this other nonsense, there's ways of just making things work. And something that I think gets sort of pushed a lot is this desire of like, you need this, and that. And like, no, you really need one of two things. And if you have one of those two things, you're good. You gotta look good and sound like shit, or sound good or look like shit. Usually, depending on your content, it's going to vary which one's going to matter. If you're looking to talk online about social issues and just talk about politics, make sure you sound good. No one's going to care about your video quality. Now, as you get deeper on the line, then you can be like, okay, maybe I want to like have a YouTube video and comment about that while I talk. Then maybe you can start asking questions like, how do I make the video, which is the content, look the best it can? Like, you don't need an amazing, as Twitch politics has taught us, you don't need an amazing cam to talk about these things. It's something I'm sure Prime Kais has taught everyone, is that the video quality of your individual does not matter, but the words that they say do. So let that speak for itself. I think like getting caught up in like having the best and greatest in technology can sometimes hinder your growth. Does it make things easier? As somebody who has a bunch of production equipment, yes, it makes your life a lot easier when you have like equipment to do this thing. But being able to troubleshoot with two phones and how to get on a panel and not like look and sound like trash is a good thing. Like, it's a good thing to be able to troubleshoot those things, because again, like for me, the best equipment is what you own, period. Not what's the best? Oh, the Shure SM7B. Can you afford the Shure SM7B? No. Can you afford a Go mic or Rode? What's it called? Like the Rode, the camera one. I can't remember. The Rode Go, the Rode Go standalone mic. Like, if that's your mic, that's the best mic. That's the best mic. Yeah. And make the best out of the best thing that you have. And then as things start expanding in a way, then you can start building up. And then even then, like, as another stream advice I would give, pick a part of your setup that you care about the most and treat that as the most serious thing of your setup. As an example, I'm always experimenting with audio and trying to solve general audio problems. Like, the only reason why I settled on this, very simple reason, is that it has a feature within the software that allows me to control the gain across multiple platforms. So what that looks like on Google Meet auto adjusts your gain based on the sensitivity of your microphone. So it pushes you up in soft points, pushes you down in loud points. When you have something that is like a professional grade microphone, that's a nightmare. Because when you have something that's just like, if your mic is good enough, where it has a good noise floor, like, it's just silent. But then what Google Meet does is that it pushes it up, because it's like, what if somebody's talking just in case? And it's like, no, my levels are my levels. So the only reason why I use this, one, it's portable. So I can, like, if I have to go teach at school, or rather the studio, as opposed to being here, I can just zip this off, pull a USB-C cable, I'm good to go. Before, I would have to take out my interface, take out my microphone, bring a stand with it, all this nonsense. And it's like, no, like, one of the goals for my setup is to be portable. So, like, every decision I make is about portability. And that was the thing that I prioritized. I prioritized quality with portability. And for other people, it's like, I just want to make sure that I sound amazing. And it's like, cool, then prioritize that. So when you're looking into improving, don't look at the webcam, don't look at the cameras, look like, okay, what within my audio should I improve? And improve upon that. If you want to look good, great, focus on that. Don't focus on the microphone. Don't focus on, like, oh, well, I know I was talking about improving my camera quality, but this microphone is on sale. No, fuck the sale, focus on the thing. Then when you feel comfortable with that part of your content, then move on to it. And sometimes there's not much to it at all. Maybe improving your content is just preparing your content better. And that could just be watching your video. I strongly recommend this as somebody who runs into the N-word a lot in 1970s content, is watch your videos before you show them to your community. Now, there's a little bit of LARPing that happens when you hit certain points to it, but you can still have the same, like, expressions and comments about the content from a second viewing of it. But so somebody, again, who's run into the N-word a little too many times with some Confederate flags and content, is you want to vet your content before you watch it, just in case. No different than vetting an individual before you bring them into your community. Like, find something within your space that you value and try to make that the best thing possible. Then move on to the next thing. Then move on to the next thing. Because this is a marathon, especially when it comes to streaming. Like, you're not going to, listen, like, unless you got a kiddie pool and a banana, it's going to be very hard to see exponential growth over time, especially in a short span. And even for that, like, find something that you want to improve upon and just double down. And I would argue, like, when you get to the amaranths all the way down to the 10 viewer streams, like, there's a prioritization of content somewhere and an aspect that can be improved upon, and just continue improving upon that thing, and people will see it.
All right. Before we leave here, I'm going to go ahead and invite the chat to ask some questions. I'm not sure if you have your eye. I can go ahead and pass some questions along to you. If you want to answer, you can. Otherwise, just feel free to pass or ignore. The only question I've seen so far is, have you ever regretted going on a debate stream, maybe a panel or something like that?
One. So there's been a few streams that have pilled me. Pilled me, is that the word? Red pill, blue pill. In terms of, like, what am I doing? And the one in question only was because of timing. So, as you know, I'm sure you saw, one of the most popular topics is the semantics of the N-word. It's a very hot topic with a lot of opinions that people have. And what I'm realizing is that sometimes you don't need to be part of every little discussion that people have. You can just watch it and just watch the popcorn happen. I was on a panel that Destiny and Vosh were on. It was after something. The reason why it's a blur to me is because I got my first vaccination that same day. And I entered into that panel at like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And it was it was rough. My brain wasn't ready to have that conversation. It just kept going on in like these weird circles. And then I got hit with a wild hypothetical, which I'm not going to get into. Okay. But then that was when like I felt my soul pull out of my body, like on some Doctor Strange type shit. And it's like, bro, what are you doing? And I just look up and it's just, I don't know, man. And the reason why I don't want to necessarily say regret it, but it opened my eyes about like what I was talking about earlier, in that like the conversations that are had in these spaces can sometimes not be consistent with reality, right? Like I'm never gonna be in a like again like we can have like crazy hypothetical conversations and like having a couple beer with some buddies and like putting like saying like imagine if you lived in not peak Nazi Germany and a Jewish group made a bunch of music that had anti-Jewish sentiment in it, but they were all Jewish. But you knew that Nazis would consume it. Would you feel like you should censor your? And then a part of me just went, "What the fuck is going on here?" Like it's like, okay, so if I'm having if I'm like around a bunch of my friends and family, maybe not my family, a little bit yikes, or maybe my friends are like going on about like the extension of an idea, like extension of a concept, I would totally humor that. And in terms of like, I don't know, like what are they talking about? But then like when I think about it in terms of like a rhetorical argument, it's like the amount of variables to allow this to happen are so improbable. Why are we even using that for our argument? And then like I pushed back on the idea and the individual, I forgot who said it, but I was like I there's so much that it's impossible to approach this hypothetical. And then like they tried to argue that like, no, it's one-to-one with what we're talking about. And then a part of my brain's like, come on, man. Like it's like almost like you want to like hit stop stream, have everything pause and just like, come on, you know it's bullshit. Like, come on. And it's like, yeah, I know it's bullshit. All right, I'm going to hit play again. We're going to get back to reality. And then we're just going to pretend that never happened, okay? Like, and that's what I mean about conversations in reality, that sometimes you're going to run into conversations online that just ain't it. And sometimes you got to pull up. Thankfully, I found a moment to pull up only because my vaccination was at 7 a.m. and the stream was at like 6:30, 6:35. Yeah. And it's like, oh, my Uber literally is notifying that it's on its way. I should probably, leave. And I guess like maybe it's not a regret, but more of like it allowed me to like get more pills than what I was thinking about for a very long time.
Yeah. Okay. Joe, I got to say, it's been a blast talking to you. This went just a hair longer than most chats, but I was loving every minute of it. I didn't want to cut you off at any point, so I got to thank you for being with me. This is a blast, and remember, we're planting seeds. I'm hoping we could return and see what seeds we planted, what's worth returning, what new seeds we want to plant. We just go from there. Just sort of take it a little bit more organically next time we talk. We get rid of the questionnaire next time.
Yeah, for sure. That's no problem.
This is a blast. Thank you for joining me, buddy. Again, we've invited you in the spirit of building leftist unity, strength, and power. In that same spirit, thank you again. I hope you have a really wonderful day. Peace and solidarity.
Yeah, you too, man. Have a good one. I'll see you soon.
All right, next time. Woo! That was Joe. Did I break it? It's okay. Don't worry about it. It's just how it goes. All right. That was Joe Lewis. Hey, YouTube. You're watching a clip from my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/iDanSimpson, where you can follow for free and subscribe for only $5 a month. Thanks for watching.